So yeah, a second video review of a movie from me this week. This time it is a Marvel's Avengers Assemble, or The Avengers, to give it its much more sensible title that's been used everywhere, but in the UK and Ireland it seems apparently we might get confused between Iron Man and Captain America and John Steed and Emma Peel. Anyway, enough of that, that's all marketing people. But yeah, I've got to admit from the start I've been hugely excited to go and see this film. I'm a big fan of the comic books, though, or a big fan of comic books in general, though probably not such an avid reader of the Avengers, but I've read my share of Thor and Iron Man and Cap and the like. So yeah, looking forward to this, and I've very much enjoyed all of the films that have led up to it. Iron Man 2, Captain America, The Incredible Hulk, even, etc. It's been about 5 years they've been coming out for, at least, I think. And yeah, so enjoyed all of those. Looking forward to it going in. And yeah, from the off, starts off thrust into this much bigger universe than even the one hinted at by Thor, which had Asgard and the Bifrost and such things all thrown in, as well as Earth. And we start off with Loki making a deal with, well, less than friendly, shall we say, bunch of aliens. And I just think it's a great way to start the film and to say this has got some serious threat and antagonism in it compared to the earlier ones, which obviously it's going to need because it's all of these guys who've consistently beaten the bad guys in all of the previous films. And yeah, it's a suitable level of threat and antagonism for the super team. So this sort of starts the film along with brief reintroductions of the main characters: Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Thor and Nick Fury. But this really impressed me because it doesn't get itself sort of bogged down in explanation and exposition of these characters. We're left to assume we know who they are, we've seen the other films, and that's that. And that's something where other sort of superhero team movies have sort of fallen down. I mean, X-Men 1 in particular, X-Men 1 sort of feels like just the first act of the rest of it, and X-Men 2 was good because we knew who they all were, and it seems Marvel have found the formula to make that work. I wonder if DC's Justice League will ever get to that stage or not. And there's always been talk and rumblings of that happening, but yeah, great way to start the film. But I suppose it's one thing that for me, being a fan of them, I know all these characters anyway, it works great. But if you don't know them, maybe it wouldn't work so well. Maybe you come in and wouldn't know who it was. But for me, it gave just enough to remind us the quirks of these characters from the films, separate to the comic books, and launches straight into the story. And I guess the story is fairly run-of-the-mill for this sort of film. It's obvious good guys squaring up against obvious bad guys, good versus evil, and in a series of confrontations. But what makes the delivery of at least the initial confrontations, I suppose, a bit different is that they rely as much really on dialogue as they do on anything else. And there are bits once Loki is sort of captured here and there that the good guys all start fighting each other and all of this, which is something sort of inherent, I think, to a lot of the Avengers material. But a lot of it relies on the dialogue, and the dialogue is really, really good comic book dialogue. I mean, it's not the deepest stuff you're going to find. It's not Shakespeare, despite the sort of vague pretenses of the Shakespearean style language that Thor and Loki use when talking with each other. But it's pacey, it's entertaining, and it's got humour and exposition all within it, but all not done in a very unclunky way, which is often a major obstacle in blockbusters where they're having to explain everything. And they don't here. It all happens and sort of is included in well-written dialogue, which I suppose is probably no real surprise because it's written and directed by Joss Whedon, who made his name on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which was also renowned for featuring similar sort of dialogue. I mean, it's great dialogue for the sort of films that these are and the sort of TV show that Buffy is. And also, he was used on working on Buffy to dealing with another sort of super team almost, although they weren't superheroes so much, but giving all of the main characters the chance to show their stuff, to be themselves. And I've got to say, while I anticipated the dialogue and all of that kind of thing from Joss Whedon to be really good, the one thing I was a little bit worried about was the action sequences. But also, I haven't seen Serenity or Firefly, which I'm told he does the action very well in, but I hadn't seen those. So going in, I was a little bit of a worry that it might not be up to standard, but really I needn't have done, because all the action scenes in it, which are numerous, surpassed my expectations and balanced the sense and logic, the comic book logic, as much as the Hulk can ever be a logical character, with the spectacle and the special effects really well. And at no point did it leave me wondering who was where and what was going on, which has been something I found with the sort of action blockbusters of recent years, particularly Transformers. Need I say more? Is that they've just done nothing but baffle and confuse, and sort of you don't know what's going on or who you should be rooting for. But in the Avengers, it was all perfectly clear, even with a huge amount of action going on. I try not to do any spoilers, but a massive amount of action in the final third of it, but it all made sense, and I followed all of the characters throughout, which, yeah, no mean feat in this kind of thing. The film is 2.5 hours long, which I have to say, when I first saw the runtime of it before I went into the cinema, I was a little bit concerned that it might overstay its welcome. But actually, the way it was put together, every character, even the sort of more minor ones of Black Widow and Hawkeye, who haven't had their own films but come into their own in this, sort of all had their bit to play and their time on screen. So at no point was I left getting particularly bored of it. It all flowed really nicely, with enough from each character to make them a main character, but not so much that any really outstayed their welcome for me. Although I can probably understand why Tony Stark might to some people, but that's the character. And yeah, 2.5 hours flew by, and at no point did I feel the need to check what time it was, which is always, I think, a good sign. If you can get through a whole film without thinking, well, how long's this been on? That's definitely good. So in all, while there's nothing sort of filmically, technically speaking, outstanding, I mean, the special effects are great and all of that, but that's what we expect from these sort of films now. Well, there's nothing filmically outstanding on offer in the Avengers. What there is best pure entertainment blockbuster I've seen in a long time. And okay, so it doesn't do what Inception did of being the intellectual blockbuster. And Inception really got that sort of cleverness and action thing spot on like nothing else, really. But I don't think it ever set out to be that. And it's about as far from the despicable mess that the Transformers films have been as it's possible to get, while being the same sort of film, which is a big action-y blockbuster. And for me, the Avengers was a triumph, to say the least. And it sounds like, with the record box office takings, at least for a Disney movie in recent years, that it's had in the UK and Europe before it's even released in America, it seems like we're going to be getting more from the team and more from the individual movies as well. And I'd have to say, I'm very excited to see Marvel finally hitting a stride and possibly even surpassing DC, who have done very well with the good Batman movies, but with a lot of their other stuff have been on some very, very shaky ground. And yeah, also the Hulk is an outstanding standout of the Avengers, which is nice to see, considering the previously, I think, troubled is probably the polite way to put it, film versions of the character.